Welcome, everybody, back into NerdSesh. As always, I'm Carson Breber, and alongside me in person today is Logan Camden. We are here at the BDGE office in New York because we have a whole lot going on here. We're doing a trivia tournament right now, and yesterday we did the BDGE Combine, which was a lot of fun. We got to test out our athleticism, see how we project to the next level. We got to play a little 7-on-7. How'd that go, Logan? How would you say that went?
I think I'm going undrafted, if I'm being honest with you, man.
I feel like I'm shooting up draft boards. I've got a very interesting athletic profile. I've got Tom Brady 40 speed. I'm a decent jumper.
Hell of a wingspan.
Great length, good size, 6'3" and 3/8.
You're strong. I think you're an underrated athlete, man.
Not really sure what position I play. Did have a touchdown in the 7-on-7 game.
I think you'd be a great tight end, man.
That's what I've always thought. That's what I've always seen for myself. But it was a ton of fun. I'll give you all my metrics so you have a sense of my profile as an athlete. 40, 5'2", Wasn't thrilled with that, but it wasn't terrible. Broad jump, 90.5 inches, which I was pretty happy with. It was the under because they set super high lines for me, but I was pleased with that. Vertical, I hit my over, 29 inches. Long toss, just a standing throw, basically just like a weight transfer. You could take like a little step into it, 33 yards. That was fine. And then we played the 7-on-7 game, and we got a dominant victory, team snapback, which I was a part of, over Logan's lowly team BDGE.
I'm not going to elaborate on any of the results.
And is it true that you touched Earth? Did somebody make you touch Earth?
I thought we had a podcast to shoot, honestly.
Somebody, I want to say, ran a comeback and go, and the change of direction was so explosive and so shifty that I want to say you touched Earth and maybe saw God for a moment.
I'm going to need to see the footage, honestly. I don't know.
I hope there is footage. I hope there is footage because it was me who did it, but I did not get the ball on that play.
My heart sunk. Carson's wide open on that clip. Like, he's waving. He's wide open.
Yeah.
That would be an all-timer. I would never be able to live that down, man.
I hope that it's caught on camera. Really, my role was just run a bunch of deep routes to clear out the underneath stuff for our better players. All I did was play my role. One-time blown coverage. You want to throw me a deep ball? I'm wide open. I'll take it. But
did get a TD, though.
It's all about the team. Did get a TD, so we'll take that. But enough of this chair chatter, Logan. This isn't a morning radio show. All right? We're here to talk about basketball. We're going to talk about, of course, the NBA playoffs. Sorry that we didn't get our episode up, as usual, on Monday. That is because we were running and jumping and getting incredibly sunburnt in my case. I am just burnt to a crisp. So we had to delay to today, but we're going to preview all of the series that are set, and we're going to do a quick little play-in preview at the end. But I want to start with the series that I've probably seen the most discourse and hype around, mostly because it involves the Los Angeles Lakers, but they are also taking on the Minnesota Timberwolves, which I think is a really interesting matchup. And the first thing I want to talk about is, how do you expect the Timberwolves to approach guarding this Lakers offense that has so many weapons?
That is the most interesting key to me from the Wolves side, and specifically the question of, can the Wolves make Luka Doncic uncomfortable? This is a new-look Lakers squad that, added Luka Doncic at the deadline, and so we've only seen one head-to-head game between them with Doncic in the lineup. And I don't really like the Wolves personnel that they're going to throw at him and how they match up against them. I just don't think they have the exact right archetype that they would need to really disrupt Luka. And, I mean, we saw this in the playoffs last year. Obviously, Luka was a Dallas Maverick, but a lot of the same supporting characters in Minnesota are going to be matched up against Luka in this matchup. If it's Anthony Edwards, if it's Jaden McDaniels, if it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. And we saw Minnesota try a lot of different things in their one head-to-head matchup against L.A., and it was, sometimes it's just man coverage, but sometimes you're seeing a 2-3 zone or a 3-2 zone. My conclusion, I don't know how you feel about it, Carson. I think Luka's going to get whatever he wants. I don't really think that any of Minnesota's perimeter defenders are really going to be able to throw Luka off of his own game. The one thing that I will mention that I think is important to do is that in that one game, he was super reliant on his three ball. It's kind of been a theme of him in the second half of the year with Los Angeles. That's his superpower to me against this team, though, is his ability to use his strength to his advantage and to back those guys down to the elbow, right, to the nail, spots like that, and manufacture whatever looks that he can, because Luka's so strong. I just don't think they have a guy that can match his strength on that side of the basketball, and I expect him to impose himself more. We've seen Luka be a little bit passive, feeling it out, and that's not anything novel, when you go to a new team, but I think he's going to be more aggressive, and that's one of my big takeaways for this Lakers offense is I think Luka and LeBron are going to get whatever they want. I don't think that Minnesota they're a great defense, and I don't want to take anything away from them, but I just don't think they have the exact right personnel to counter the two Lakers superstars, it's really as simple as that. I think you got to try to make life difficult on them. I just don't know what defensive personnel you apply to who, or I don't know what strategy you try to employ. I don't think there's a good answer for them.
Well, obviously, Luka filleted the T-Wolves in the playoffs last year. That was easily his best series of the playoff run. And part of that was incredible shooting. He was like 43% from three. But another part was, as great as the Timberwolves' perimeter defensive personnel is, you mentioned they don't have that guy who can counter Luka's strength. Specifically, Jaden McDaniels, one of the best perimeter defenders on the planet. He's conceding 50 pounds to Luka, so there's just too much of a strength gap there for him to make him uncomfortable, for him to keep Luka from getting to his spots in isolation. So I think that they start with Ant on Luka. Now, in terms of pick and roll defense, Jaden McDaniels is a significantly better screen navigator than Ant, so you are worried about Ant maybe not being as precise navigating those screens, but just in terms of his ability to guard Luka on an island, I actually think he is a significantly better answer because he just has that strength component. Is he a great option?
You think Ant's the best option for Luka?
I think Ant's a better option to cover Luka than Jaden McDaniels, but we saw them make that switch last year, and I did think that it was an improvement. It wasn't the answer, but it was an improvement. So I'm expecting them to start with that matchup, Ant on Luka, and then I've seen a lot of discourse about what do you do with Rudy in this series. I'm expecting them to just start with him on Jackson Hayes, and I think that you have him play drop and try to see how much pressure, back pressure Ant can apply getting around screens. And, if you play good perimeter defense, obviously Rudy Gobert is one of the best drop defenders in basketball. So, that could be a really, really good drop coverage duo. The challenge is, Luka is really, really good against drop. And, if he's comfortable and his touch shots are falling and he's getting to his floaters and he's able to walk into a couple pull-up threes, he's comfortable making all the reads when he gets into the lane against drop. That's the challenge of it, but I just struggle to see the alternatives. I've seen some people propose putting Rudy on a wing and just trying to keep him down low on the baseline as a helper as much as you can, keeping him out of getting involved in those pick and roll actions at all. I just worry that the Lakers shooting is too good. If that's Rui in the corner, if that's DFS in the corner, those are 40% three-point shooters. And I just think that Rudy is more impactful as a drop defender where he's excellent than he is trying to roam off of shooters too much and letting those guys get open looks.
Do you think that if you were the Timberwolves, would you try to match those minutes? Because I would be a little bit weary of Rudy potentially getting played off the floor a little bit in this matchup. I mean, the superpower that you're talking about with the Lakers, and I've noticed this stat in the past on our shows, the Lakers attempt damn near 8 more threes a game with Luka in the lineup than they did without Luka in the lineup, and they have elite spacing and shooting around them. So what would you do with that? Would you try to match the minutes with Jackson Hayes when they have a big body on the floor, and then when they go small, maybe go Naz Reid at the 5 and try to match their small ball looks? Would you try to exploit the fact that they're running small ball units and have Rudy out there to anchor the glass in the interior? Because I am a little bit nervous about Rudy Gobert in this matchup, man. I think just specifically because I think Rudy is really viable. Rudy gets a lot of hate from people in the basketball world, and I always defend Rudy. But this is a specific matchup where I'm really worried about him defending in space a lot and having to pull his weight on the perimeter and just having an exploitable piece of your defense. So what would you try to do with him?
I think that they're going to play Rudy a ton of minutes. And I think that there are some misconceptions about how small ball lineups work against Rudy. The biggest problem that Rudy has against small ball lineups, in my opinion, is that offensively, he can't punish you for going small. Now, maybe he's able to do so on the glass, but he usually doesn't do so as a scorer.
He has horrible hands.
Yeah. And then defensively, it's no fault of Rudy's. It's just if you can get away with playing true 5-out offense, you're going to mitigate any dominant rim protector's effectiveness because you're pulling him out into space more often. It's not that Rudy can't guard in space. That's been disproven a number of times. He's totally capable there, but it is obviously not where he's most effective, which is as a deterrent and rim protector on the interior. So I do expect the Lakers to go small a lot in this series, and I think that there's sort of some interesting dynamics at play there because If you think about what you're going to do with Rudy defensively there, let's say that now you're using DFS as the screener, you're using Rui as the screener for a Luka pick and roll. I think that Rudy stays in drop there because there's no vertical spacing dynamic from those guys, right? They're not going to be comfortable rolling. You're basically going to dare them to make above the break threes, and they're very good shooters. They're very good shooters, but what I would say is it's a different role when you're shooting pick and pop threes, and I think you've even seen like when they have used those guys as screeners against drop coverage. I think about the second Thunder game. Luka is a little bit more hesitant to even make those passes to those guys as poppers than he would be just making a kick out pass to the corner or a skip pass to the corner. So, like, there's obviously a world in which those guys are consistently getting found by Luka and they're making 40% of those above the break threes. And, like, that's a huge problem for Minnesota. I don't really see the alternative, though, when Rudy's on the floor. And you take Rudy off the floor, Nas isn't the answer. Because Nas isn't better guarding in space.
He's not better guarding in space, but it definitely gives you a strong counter. And that's what I'm really trying to weigh here. Yeah. The pros and cons of playing Rudy, because I think Rudy could have a pronounced impact on the boards where maybe for stretches of the game, he's just dominating the glass and he's just eating there. My issue comes when I'm thinking about the supporting cast off of Anthony Edwards, because in that offensive set, it's like, what's stopping them from throwing doubles at Ant or...
So you're saying if the Lakers go small, it's turning into a track meet, and you'd rather be able to just match their
I wonder if that's a better
firepower?
counter. Just because I worry about them in the half court specifically, really being able to gang up on Ant and throw multiple bodies at them, and the Timberwolves on the back end not being able to punish them because of Rudy's offensive inconsistencies and his deficiencies, because of Julius Randle's inconsistency in shooting, Jaden McDaniel's spacing, Mike Conley's inability to score the ball at this point in his career. And so I wonder if it's just worth it playing small. And the Wolves, I get that it's, March and April basketball and such, but the Wolves small ball lineup had produced some really, really good results in the second half of this season. So that's just what I'm wondering, the trade-off, because I think that Gobert does have his pros, but he's got some pretty big cons. When you take him off the floor, you're losing that defensive identity, but you're getting faster. I think you probably match up a little bit better with them speed-wise, and you have so much more offensive skill. That's the big trade-off that I'm looking. When you get Nas on the floor, I'm getting a 40% shooter from everywhere on the floor. I'm getting another guy who can reliably handle, just another guy the defense has to respect. And I just wonder if that spacing is better than what Gobert gives me.
I see what you're saying, and we'll certainly see minutes where Nas is at the 5, and I think then you can get a gauge of like, okay, how much are we winning this trade-off with our offensive production being better? But my inclination would be if the Lakers are going to spread you out with those small ball lineups, that's a problem for any team in the league, really, for any defensive group.
Because that defense can just hemorrhage threes at an insane rate.
Well, they're just going to generate a bunch of open threes
against
anybody when they have that much shooting and skill on the floor. I would still want to at least start with by far my best rim protector, but by far my best rebounder, by far my best defensive player on the floor. See how convincingly you can win those minutes on the glass, because that could be big, right? The Lakers have been decent rebounding in their small ball groups, but the Timberwolves are an excellent rebounding team with Rudy on the floor.
Maybe it's a case-by-case basis, too, because what I was going to say is if the Lakers are missing shots, massive advantage Timberwolves. Like, if they're having an off shooting night, Rudy is going to crush them on the glass.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's not just Rudy. It's this collective. They're so big and strong and athletic. Like, they should dominate the glass if the Lakers are missing shots.
Julius Randle would be the second best rebounder on the floor.
Exactly. I've just seen so many games where the Lakers just aren't missing, where they are just flame-throwing everything. And that's where Rudy's value is at its lowest.
The one other option that I can see the Timberwolves turning to with Rudy on the floor defensively against those small ball looks is pre-switching everything to keep him on the baseline. Just pre-switching so you can't bring him into the action. And that's possible that they attempt that, but I would probably start with him just playing drop.
What's the benefit of that?
The benefit of that is that he's constantly on the baseline, and so he's there as a help defender, and you're not bringing him out into space. The downside is he's an excellent drop defender, and so now you're just trusting you're switching on the perimeter. And again, the Lakers shooting is so damn good that it's like, how much is Rudy going to be able to roam off and blow things up as the low man when there's a 40% three-point shooter in his corner?
Do you not think that JJ would try to bring that player into the action if that's what they were doing?
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying they pre-switch Rudy out every single time.
Got you.
So if you call up his man to screen,
he stays low and they
he
switch.
stays low no matter what. And
Got
you
you.
pre-switch before you.
So he's
bring Rudy
basically
into the
just
action.
guarding that part of the floor.
Exactly. He would effectively be in like a one-man zone, right? He's just pre-switching every time. And I could see them trying that.
I definitely think they should.
Yeah. It's just hard, man. Like, any team with a conventional big is going to really struggle to defend the Lakers going small. And I think the Lakers are going to win those minutes when they do go small. Now, the Timberwolves have advantages there. They have advantages with their size, with their rebounding. But I just think the offense is going to be so good, and I don't know how much Rudy is really going to be able to punish them for going small. The other interesting part of the Lakers going small, which they're going to do for a lot of these minutes, right? The Timberwolves are a big team, so maybe they play Hayes a little bit more, but normally he gets about 20 minutes a night, and then the other 28 minutes of the game, they're going small, is how they match up defensively, because we know the offense is potent. How do you think the Lakers' defense matches up with Anthony Edwards in this series?
I think that's the other big question about this. I would put DFS and Hachimura on Ant, and I would play them both. I think they're the best potential matchups. If you're looking,
Are you saying that you would start small with both those guys alongside the big three?
That's what's tough is I don't know what lineup they're going to run, if it's Jackson Hayes.
Yeah, I think they'll start with Hayes.
I'm just saying, whoever's on the floor, those are the two primary guys I would want to have on Ant the most.
What about Vando? Do you think you just can't play Vando?
No, I think Vando's very playable. And I have not felt that way about Vando, but there's so much surrounding skill that if you're running Vando, I think Vando could wreak havoc on
He's the best Ant defender on the roster, no question. He's just the best point of attack defender they have.
I think if you're running,
the challenge is with Vando on the floor,
you can't run it with Hayes.
You can't do that, but also now Gobert has an out. He has like a non-threat on the floor
that he can sag off of.
That's
a good point.
Vando's not a threat as a roller. He's not a threat as a shooter. He's just not a scoring threat whatsoever. And so I wonder if you're effectively playing 4-on-5 offensively, even though Vando is your best perimeter defender, again, your best point of attack defender, but I would just be trying to limit Rudy's ability to stay parked in that paint as much as possible, and I think that Vando is the guy who gives him the easiest path to doing that.
That's a fair point. I would try Vando because I think you at least need to look at what he can give you in this series, and they're so desperate. They so desperately need, defensive playmakers. I think Hachimura and DFS are the two best that are going to be reliably playing minutes against Ant. That being said, if I'm the Minnesota Timberwolves, my objective every offensive possession is to hunt a switch when Ant has the ball in his hands on a Luka, on an Austin Reeves, on a Dalton Connect, on a Gabe Vincent. Any of these slower-footed, like less agile guys, because I think DFS, not that he can, Ant's a freak. It's not like I think anybody can hold Anthony Edwards, but I think DFS can challenge him and make life hard on him and stay attached as a shooter. All of those other ones are mismatches. And so I don't care who they're playing alongside Ant. Whatever the liability is on the floor, if it's a Luka, if it's a Reeves, Vincent, Connect, I am relentlessly running and seeing if I can get that switch immediately. And I'm attacking relentlessly downhill, and I'm going to challenge LA's rim protection in single coverage because I'm going to want to make them work down there. I think that's the weak point of this defense. Jackson Hayes is cool, but I want to make LA work, and I don't think they have a ton of guys if we're hunting those switches who can stay in front of Ant. So I think this could be a monster Ant series, man. Ant is not what I'm worried about at all with Minnesota. With the level he's been at this year as a shooter, with the lack of rim protection that LA has, I think he could have a huge series. Again, I regurgitate this stat all the time about Anthony Edwards, but it's because I think it's so impressive. He's one of 4 players in NBA history to average 40% from deep on 10 or more threes attempted per game. That list includes Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, and Damian Lillard. And so when you were getting this insane rim pressure with this elite three-point shooting, he's just one of the most unstoppable and efficient and effective players in basketball. And so I think it could be a huge Ant series. What I think is going to happen, Carson, with Ant, because I don't think anybody can hold him, I think we're inevitably going to see LA cheat and throw doubles at him, and I think this series is basically going to be decided by the Wolves supporting cast, ability to knock down shots, and Ant's ability to play make out of those double teams, because that was what I would do if I was LA. I think they're going to get cooked in single coverage against him. I think that inevitably makes you bring 2 defenders to the ball, and I would probably cheat off a Gobert if he's on the floor, or whoever it is, because you're going to have to concede some things when you're guarding an Anthony Edwards.
Yeah.
But specifically, the supporting cast's ability to hit shots and space the floor and Ant's ability to make good decisions and play make out of those double teams are really crucial for Minnesota's offense.
I think it's actually a really interesting matchup for Ant, because you talk about expecting him to have a monster series, and I see where you're coming from, because I feel like when you look at the Lakers' defensive personnel and you think about Anthony Edwards' skill set, your first thought is you are putting this crazy downhill athlete who's also an elite pull-up shooter against a team that doesn't have good point of attack defenders and lacks conventional rim protection, going to play small for extended minutes. Jackson Hayes isn't a great rim protector. He's solid there. Ant should feast in that matchup when you just think about those two components, but I don't think it's that simple. And the reason for that is basically that the Lakers are a very unique defense. Now, we know that they're going to be very switch-heavy, so Ant, who has been so phenomenal as a pull-up three-point shooter, he's not going to get to walk into any pull-up threes versus drop. He's just not going to see them. They'll switch Jackson Hayes on him. They'll switch anybody onto him. And then you know who he's going to hunt off those switches, right? You mentioned them. Luka, Reeves, Hayes, even though he defends relatively well in space for a big, he's still a big. Ant should be able to get past all those guys. And then you think, well, he's on his way downhill. He's going to now take advantage of that lack of rim protection. But what's so tricky with the Lakers defense, I thought that Jason put this really well when we had him on our show, is they force you to play in a crowd. That's how Jason put it, right? They have a lot of pretty big dudes who sit in those driving lanes and make you see multiple bodies, and they play good active help. And that's where I think, more so than them throwing doubles outright at Ant, which I do think we could see, I think they're going to be like, okay, so you got by your man. We're not defending you one-on-one. We're defending you as a team. And we are going to muck things up on your drives, make you beat us as a passer, maybe force you to settle for some more of those mid-range jumpers, which we'd love you to take compared to a shot at the rim or a shot from three, because Ant's a 37% mid-range shooter this year. Like, that's where I think he's going to be challenged by this defense.
When you're okay with conceding those shots and you're okay with cheating more off of the Timberwolves' help, because McDaniels is inconsistent as a shooter, because Randall's not super reliable as a shooter. And so I think that will allow the Lakers to cheat even more in those driving lanes on Ant and force those mid-range jumpers. But I do think Ant's going to get his. I think he's going to have some big games. Like, I think that by and large, I think that's a really good strategy for LA. But I don't think it's going to be as simple as that. I think Ant's going to be able to get downhill a decent amount of time.
I still think he'll have a solid series just because he does have such physical advantages. And I honestly think he is probably going to be more inclined to use his downhill threat to free up space for himself as a pull-up three-point shooter, because I think he knows, like, I can get by these guys, but I am going to see some packed paint. And so you leverage, like, Luka knows he can't stay in front of me. He overreacts to my first step, and then I step back and hit a pretty open three. I've created a good amount of space. I think that he will have a solid series, but I think he's going to be tested a lot as a passer, and I think the Lakers will defend him better than you might think looking at their roster on paper, because when they want to be, they are a better team defense than their personnel would suggest when you look at a couple of those key categories. They make up for it in their own funky way. What about Julius Randle? What are you expecting from him in this series?
Nothing. I don't.
Disaster? Are you expecting a disaster? Can he do it for the third time? Can he three-peat?
I hope for his sake. I mean, discourse is already nasty about Julius Randle. Not that I'm not a proponent of that, but I mean,
what?
That's why I can't bet on the Timberwolves to win this series. I don't want to let the cat out of the bag right now, but that's ultimately why I'm going to take the Lakers to win this series. Is it's like I can see Minnesota doing it. And it's going to take some very specific things. I think the Lakers would have to be off is shot makers. I think Luka would just have to be off in general. I think he's settling for a lot of threes and missing a lot of threes in a hypothetical series that Minnesota wins. I think that the Lakers' three-point shooting is disrupted by, a really good Minnesota defense. I think they're dominant on the glass, and they're leveraging their strength in matchups that they can win, and I think Anthony Edwards has a monster series. I wouldn't completely rule that out. I have a lot of respect for Minnesota, but there's three guys that I look at on this team that I just lose a lot of faith in. One is Julius Randle. I've regurgitated this stat a million times, you've probably heard. He is the least efficient 15-point-per-game playoff scorer since 2000. You don't want to be that guy. Rudy Gobert, I think, could get picked on in this series, where I'm talking about the Lakers' three-point shooting ability. It's not only volume, where they shoot 8 threes more per game with Luka. They shoot 4 or 3% better on threes when Luka's in versus without. And the third guy is Mike Conley, who just this year has taken a really, really big step back. He had taken a little bit of step back, over the past couple of years, but last year to this year, he goes from 11 to 8 points per game. He goes from a 46% shooter from the field to a 40% shooter from the field. And specifically on two-point attempts, the most damning number to me is that he's gone from a 48% shooter on twos to 38% on twos. And so I think it's going to be a competitive series. I don't think they're going to be let off the hook by any mean. I think that the Wolves are a really tough team. So I would say Lakers in 6. And another thing is I would give the coaching advantage to the Lakers. I prefer J.J. Redick. I think J.J. Redick is brilliant. I think if there's a guy that I trust more to make adjustments with his personnel within a series that will win them the series, it's certainly J.J. Redick. And so just a little, and don't get me wrong, man, I'm not logically consistent with this in all of my series. There's some other series where I have to do more mental gymnastics for the team to win. But specifically, there's just a lot working against Minnesota, man. And I guess I just see an easier path for LA with this elite offense.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that both teams absolutely have paths to victory, but you mentioned some of those key members of the Timberwolves offense you don't trust. That's been my holdup with this team all year, even as they've been winning a bunch of games as of late. It's just a lot of areas of concern for me when it comes to playoff offense. We talked about Rudy. Can he punish them for going small? I actually think this is going to be a good Conley series, even though I think he's really regressed this year. And the reason for that is I think Ant is going to be seeing multiple bodies so much. Conley is an excellent three-point shooter. He's an excellent catch and shooter, and he's a really good decision maker and passer still. So obviously the scouting report is run him off the line, try to funnel him in to help in the paint, and he's just not a scoring threat. But if he's getting open catch and shoot looks because he's one pass away from Ant, or if he's able to attack with an advantage and find an open teammate, that's where I think his offensive skill set actually is pretty valuable in this series. Like we were talking with Hoop Venue the other week about who should be that Timberwolves 5th starter, and kind of concluded it's matchup dependent. Some series it's Conley, some series it's Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I think NAW is better than Conley right now, but I would rather have Conley's offensive skill set in this series. So I'm not as worried about him, but he is still limited, like you said. When it comes to Randle, this is not a super easy matchup for him because what he does best offensively is attack mismatches. This is a defense that is going to switch a ton, but I don't see a lot of those matchups that are super advantageous for him because the Lakers have that archetype of big, bulky wing.
And they don't play enough minutes of those other guys where he would be getting those switches, right? If it was even the guys I mentioned earlier who were smaller than him.
Right.
If
Connect won't see the floor in this series.
They're not. And so the only guy that you could potentially attack is Austin Reeves, but it's everybody else on the floor can guard Randle,
So that's what I'm thinking. I actually think Luka, just as a size and physicality counter, 100%. Pretty good. Rui, another one of those big wings. LeBron, obviously. DFS matches up pretty well. So Reeves is that one guy, but then, okay, let's say that you can impose yourself physically against Austin Reeves. Julius Randle is going to have to make all the same reads and deal with playing in a crowd just like Ant is. That's just what they're going to do. They don't have conventional rim protection. Randle and Ant are guys who have athletic advantages in this matchup and could theoretically get all the way downhill. The Lakers just won't let them. They will force them to settle for mid-range jumpers, or they will force them to make kick-out passes and force other guys around them to make shots and make good decisions all series long. And Julius Randle is not somebody I trust a ton as a consistent decision maker. He's not somebody I trust a ton as a consistent difficult shot maker, because we've seen him fail in those same exact areas in the past in the playoffs. So the other Timberwolves around those two guys really have to make shots.
Yep.
And I just don't trust them enough to do that, to pick them to win a 7-game series, when I feel like as good as the Timberwolves defense is, the Lakers offense is going to produce. And especially when they go small, I think that it's just a really, really difficult offense to guard.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I mentioned in our show with Jason when I went off on the Timberwolves after that disastrous blown game. I don't trust the clutch offense enough. I mentioned this stat on that show, but 26 of their, however many at the time was 33 losses, had been in the clutch. And that's the most of any team, the highest percentage of losses that have happened in there. It's like, when you have consistently shown me that Achilles heel, the fact that in crunch time, that's when, and that's the most important thing to me about this team. Yeah. Playoffs are going to be decided by who can execute in those late game moments. And I don't trust the Timberwolves to do that. They have consistently crumbled in so many of those instances. I want to be wrong. I love the Timberwolves. I love Anthony Edwards. I just don't believe in them enough, man. I think there's too many flaws offensively, and the Lakers are an elite offense. That's a huge contrast in this series. So I think I'm going to go – I think I'm going to take the Lakers in 7. I think this goes the distance.
I can really see that. I can definitely see that.
It's because and I get that I'm saying a lot of positives about the Lakers. It's just the 7 versus 6 thing isn't faith in Anthony Edwards thing. I think that Ant is going to get them so close because I think he's that great of a basketball player. But when the chips are down, I think the Lakers will take the last game.
You mentioned the clutch factor. That is a big difference to me. The Timberwolves have consistently struggled there. And I have so much faith in a Luka Doncic, LeBron-led offense to execute down the stretch. I also think we talked a lot about what are the Wolves going to do with Luka. I think they're going to have to put Randle on LeBron just to have a physical counter, but Julius Randle just isn't a very good defensive player. There's clearly a quickness advantage there. And then I do think because Ant is a better Luka defender than Jaden McDaniels, that allows them to put their best perimeter defender, who is Jaden McDaniels, on Austin Reeves if they do that matchup. If they execute this as I think that'd be anticipating.
I think he's smart.
Which I think is hard for Austin Reeves.
Very.
He's been phenomenal this season, obviously, but I could see them keeping him in check more. I think Luka and LeBron are the guys who are still going to have very good offensive series. And the shooters, man, I mean, you really can't understate that part of the equation. A lot of really good spot-up shooters on this team.
You put great shooters around two guys who manufacture more wide-open threes and great looks for their players than anybody else on the planet, man. It's a great recipe for offensive success.
Very difficult to guard. So I do think that this is going to be a war of a series because when the Timberwolves walk into a playoff series, I expect a war, man. They just bring that physicality. They bring that intensity, and they can win games off of playing their bully ball, being extremely physical, winning on the glass convincingly. And Ant and Randle, I do think, are going to get a step on their guy a lot and are going to get downhill a lot. Like I said, I just don't see them getting all the way to the rim a lot. And there will be games where they're making the right reads and they're making the right decisions, and the Timberwolves shoot 40% from three, and they win.
There'll be games when those lanes are getting cut off and they're settling for mid-range jumpers and they're off as mid-range jump shooters. Yeah.
And the shooters around them are off and they're making bad decisions. So that's where I just think I trust the Lakers superstars to create the best offense. I trust their shooting, and I think they can defend the Timberwolves pretty well. I'm going to go Lakers in a hard-fought 6. I can see the Timberwolves winning, but I have more confidence in the Lakers. Let's go to the other series out west, Logan. This is going to be so much fun. The 4-5 matchup between the Nuggets and the Clippers. What's the first key that stands out to you here?
The first matchup I'm really looking at is Jokic versus Zubats. And just how they, match up with each other, like strength and physically wise. Like, I don't think Zubats can limit Jokic's offensive impact. I think Jokic is going to get whatever he wants against Big Zoo, but I think he can battle on the glass. The reason I say that about him on offense is specifically Jokic's touch and his ability to shoot. Like, Zoo is so uncomfortable on the perimeter. if it's a guard or if it's a big, like if you can shoot, like Zoo's tendency is to play, he's going to give you that defensive cushion when he's switched out on the perimeter. And even though, Jokic has that slow wind up behind his head kind of shot, he can get that off at will. And he shot 43.5% on above the break threes this year. And so that's number one in this matchup, is that's going to open up the rest of the floor on the back end for cuts and stuff like that. And I don't think Big Zoo is going to be able to slow down Jokic. But I do think battling in the post, on the glass, I think that Zoo is a really, really good counter. But I really wonder about the Clippers' small ball looks that they like, if they're going to even be viable against Jokic, or you just have to straight up match those minutes.
I think they'll play Drew Eubanks when Zoo isn't on the floor.
Advantage Denver.
They were playing Mo Bamba, dude, when he was on the roster. Like, I think that they are going to match him with a center for all their minutes.
And so we can, not that I'm wiping that away, but I think I know what Jokic is. I know what I'm getting from Jokic.
Yeah.
He could have a bad series. Every player could. But Jokic has had such a monumentally, historically, great season, and he's been so great all year long that I think, I'm just so confident what I'm going to get out of him offensively. So then I look at the rest of the Nuggets offense, and my next big question is, are Murray and MPJ going to be effective enough against the Clippers' defensive personnel? Because like we saw against Minnesota, a team with really good defensive personnel last year that bounced Denver, it's just hard for them. They're really, really limited as self-creators. And when I look at the personnel, if it's a Chris Dunn, if it's a Derrick Jones Jr., if it's a Ben Simmons, and even though Kawhi isn't the same defender that he once was, he's still a good defender against guys like this, I worry about them getting swallowed up, getting out-physical, getting mauled by the Clippers the way they were against Minnesota. And so I desperately think you need Jamal Murray to play at a star level. Again, you can't understate this fact. During their playoff run, this was a guy that was 26 points and 7 assists per game on nearly 59% true shooting. Not super, super efficient, but that volume in the playoffs, hell yeah. That's exactly what they needed to get across the finish line. Last year in the playoffs, he gave you 21 points and under 6 assists per game on under 50% true shooting, 47.4%. The thing about this year is he's returning from a hamstring injury for these playoffs. I will say, he's played 2 games since then. He has not shot well in those games. I think he looks fine. I think physically Jamal Murray looks good. In the stretch of basketball that we saw before this injury, I thought he looked physically locked in. I thought he looked great.
Yeah.
He's not knocking down all his shots. He's a tough shot maker. Some games you're going to have like that. I wouldn't put too much stock in the 2 games that we saw from him statistics-wise. But it's not just Jamal Murray that needs to play at a star level. It's also MPJ. I will say, Murray obviously has to find his shot. Physically he can be fine. His shot has to be on in this series. MPJ is going to have to be on as a shot maker as well, man. And I think there's ways to get him his looks, but I think this personnel is going to be really good on him. I think they match up really well against MPJ. What I would do offensively if I'm Denver, I would utilize MPJ as an off-ball screener as much as I could. Because, like I said, I think with Zoo out of the paint, with Jokic at the top of the key, I think that's going to open all of the floor up for the Denver Nuggets offense. And I think if you can just run, literally just running MPJ off screens on guys that are spotting up, and then running actions off of that to initiate your offense is what I would do every possession. If MPJ cuts off of that screen, if MPJ pops off of that screen, just to give that second of confusion to this Clipper defense, and Jokic can make them pay because he's such a good decision maker. But there's another component with that. It's not just manufacturing those looks, it's the shooters around Jokic capitalizing off those looks. And so that's why I look beyond Jamal and MPJ. Those guys are variables, but they're lesser variables than the other shooters on this team, specifically Westbrook, Christian Brown, and Peyton Watson, who I don't know how many minutes these guys are going to get. I think Brown's going to get major burn because they need him. But Watson and Westbrook, I don't know. That being said, whatever minutes they give them, these guys have to knock down open shots. Because if I'm the Clippers, I'm going to play off of those guys. And I'm going to be okay with playing off of those guys all game long. Make your shots. I'd rather double team the problems on this team and concede those shots because they don't scare me. Carson, what do you think those 3 guys shot cumulatively from deep this year?
Peyton Watson, Russ, and Christian Brown. Well, Christian Brown got up close to 40%. It's a pretty fake close to 40% because it doesn't take a lot of them. Peyton Watson had a better shooting season, too. I think he ended up in the mid-30s. Russ is obviously going to bring this whole thing down. I'll say collectively, maybe 35%.
28%.
That's not right. Russ, Peyton Watson, and Christian Brown? No chance. I'm double-checking that right now.
Maybe my stats wrong. They're not good shooters, though. But that's the big thing about this for this series, right? Jokic, I can wipe away. MPJ and Murray, we got to hope that they're on as shot makers. You can't let the Clippers help off of those guys relentlessly without
it's
making them
such
pay,
fake news from Logan Camden.
Dude, it's not.
Russell Westbrook, 32% from three. Peyton Watson, 35% from three.
Go to the totals.
What do you mean by that? If all of their
And actually,
percentages
Matt
are significantly higher than 28.
My math's wrong.
I nailed it. They probably shot 35% between the three of them.
I did. My numbers were wrong.
Christian Brown, 40%. Peyton Watson, 35%. Russell Westbrook, 32%.
Can you divide 231 by 824? Whatever those numbers were is what I got to. I guess they were
That's
not
not
accurate.
right. You miscounted somewhere. But anyways, we'll keep moving on.
I can't counter read, so that's an error on my end.
Something we're working through.
But regardless, they're not good shooters. Those numbers are inflated because all those dudes shoot is wide open three-pointers. And you can't let them off the hook because if those guys aren't making shots, I think that changes the complexity of this whole series where these really good perimeter defenders are all game long going to be okay with defending those shots, or helping off of those guys and defending Aaron Gordon or defending Jokic or defending Murray or defending MPJ. You just can't have those guys missing shots. It's vitally important. But I do think the Clippers have some weak points defensively. I would pick on James Harden off ball if he's falling asleep. I would try to pick on Zubac in space when he's switched out on the perimeter whenever possible. But those guys got to pull their weight. If Jamal Murray is not at 25 points per game, decently efficient, I'm a little worried.
That's a high bar.
It is a high bar, but it's like anytime the Nuggets have had success, he has reached that mark, like somewhere between 24 and 25 a night. And so if Murray's not giving me that on a nightly basis, if MPJ is not over 15, I'm worried because I don't trust the supporting cast. Jokic and Aaron Gordon, I'm not worried about. I think they're fine. But it's MPJ and Murray pulling their weight, and then it's the surrounding shooters that I really, really worry about with this Denver offense.
It's a really interesting matchup for them, and I actually think specifically it's a really interesting matchup for Jokic because I think he's the best offensive player ever. I think specifically he has the highest offensive floor in NBA history. And over the last two seasons, you look at his numbers versus the Clippers, the raw production, it's still insane. 29, 13, and 8. That's just what he does in every matchup, right? But the efficiency is worse against the Clippers than any other team in basketball for him. Jokic, over those two seasons, shooting 47% from two against the Clippers. It is by far the matchup in which he has his lowest field goal percentage, 2-point percentage, and true shooting percentage. And specifically, Ivica Zubac guards him as well as anybody on the planet. And in fact, when guarded by Zoo over the last two seasons, Jokic has shot 38% from the field. That is by far his worst field goal percentage against anybody to defend him on 30-plus field goal attempts, and Zoo has 70-something field goal attempts. So it's a legitimate sample size. It's pretty intuitive, but Zoo is like the ultimate version of the archetype that guards Jokic the best because foot speed isn't a huge factor against him because that's not how he's going to beat you anyways, right? Length can be a factor, but at the same time, his strength is so overwhelming. He can create space from you with a bump, get up a quick touch shot over the top, and he can negate that length. The one thing that can neutralize his massive strength advantage is when you have another guy who is massive and is basically as strong as him.
He takes away the easiest shot that Jokic can always get to, and doesn't take it away. Let me be clear about that, right? Because
Makes it harder.
Exactly.
Makes it significantly
makes it
harder.
way more difficult because, like we always mention, Jokic shoots 60 to 65% in the paint non-restricted area, and that's the bread and butter area for him where he can just get to those post-touch, those post-looks, those easy floaters. That's a huge game changer. That Zubac can take away the easiest shot in Jokic's, bag. He's
just as good a Jokic defender as there is, and like I said, man, you look around the league, it's like Bam Adebayo can't do anything with
Rudy or
Jokic,
Zoo,
right? I think Zoo's a better defender. I think the strength factor for him, just when it comes to that one-on-one post defense, against Jokic, obviously, is what we're talking about. He's such a great post defender. And, like, dude, you think about some of the elite Jokic defenders. It's like Domantas Sabonis defends him insanely well. Cat defends him super well. Oh, yeah, you're not going to want to acknowledge that.
I said Domantas Sabonis.
He does, bro. He
Sabonis
does.
sucks, bro.
He is a very good Jokic defender in the post because he can neutralize his strength and physicality. Watch the games, look at the numbers, it all backs it up. He shot like 40.
I don't want you to ever say anything positive about Domantas Sabonis.
All right, well, anyways, I'll say something positive about Zoo because he's the man, and he really is an excellent Jokic defender.
Hey, can I ask you something?
Please.
Would you rather have Zoo or Sabonis?
What kind of team am I trying to build?
I'm not.
In a vacuum, Sabonis.
I'm taking Zoo.
If I am looking for a ceiling-raising center to fill a role, obviously Zoo. Zoo is really, really good.
I would take Zoo over Sabonis, and I wouldn't think about it.
How is this turning into a Sabonis thing?
I'm just saying.
This is a Clippers-Nuggets
In any
thing.
context, I'm taking Zoo.
You probably take anybody over Domantas Sabonis. You probably take...
Onyeka Okongwu.
Well, shout out Onyeka. He's a good player. Jokic against the Clippers, as I said, has been his least efficient out of all of his matchups. He's also averaged his most turnovers per game against them over the last 2 seasons.
Really?
4.7 turnovers per game, almost 5 turnovers a game. They just do a phenomenal job of using their collective athleticism, activity, getting some passing lanes, make some plays, and specifically, it's interesting, Logan, how you laid it out, and you talked about how Jokic's ability to play from the perimeter is a problem for Zoo. And while I don't disagree necessarily, if Jokic is playing primarily from the perimeter, that's a win for the defense. And that's what the Clippers make him do more than anybody else. He's averaged over the last 2 years 7.2 three-point attempts per game versus the Clippers. That's his most versus any opponent. So the Nuggets, when it comes to this matchup, because this isn't one of the situations where they feel like it's just Jokic, we'll let you go to work in the post. You have an advantage every time. You'll just dominate down there. It's more, let's try to get him curling around a screen. Let's maybe try to get him on a face cut. Let's get him out in space. Let's have him running some inverted pick and roll, handling more. Let's have him popping. And yes, he is good at all of those things, but he's not as great at it as he is dominating the paint.
I agree with that. The reason that I think it's advantage Denver is solely because you're also taking Big Zoo out of the paint where he's most effective as a defender. And I think that opens up the middle of the floor for Jokic to kill you as a playmaker, where back cuts from Aaron Gordon, back cuts from Christian Brown, off-ball actions from MPJ. It's so much easier for that team, or for the Nuggets specifically, just because, you know, there's so much more space to work with. And you're losing your most important rim protector on the inside. Not that the Clippers don't have good personnel on the back end to blow some of those plays up, because they do, but
I totally agree.
Big Zoo's not going to be there.
That's why Jokic's jumper is going to be so massive.
You think it's the biggest thing in the series?
Possibly for Denver's offense. Yeah, I think the defensive side of the ball is going to be a whole different story for them. But it's what you said. It's a two-pronged thing. He has to make the shots because he is going to be more reliant on them as a scorer than normal. So he needs them for his production and efficiency.
Teams were content with leaving him alone last year when his shot was off, and that sunk him sometimes.
But the second aspect is exactly what you said. It's pulling Zoo out into space more, making him respect the shot, and what that opens up for cutters in the entirety of the offense, driving lanes for his teammates. Obviously, this has been a phenomenal jump shooting season from Jokic. He hasn't been as insane down the stretch last 25 games. He's 35% from three. This is the best he's been as a shooter. I expect him to shoot well, but Logan, he has shot really well against the Clippers. I mentioned all those stats from the last 2 years. The one thing he's done really well is made like 43% of his threes, I think, and he's still been that inefficient overall. So it's a challenging matchup. I want to be clear. He's Nikola Jokic. He's the best offensive player ever. I expect him to have a monster series. I expect him to put up 28, 13, and 9, like whatever it is. My point is he's going to have to work harder to do so.
I completely agree.
I think he's going to be a bit less efficient than normally.
He's
going to have to adjust his style. And these are the things that can make the difference, right? His floor is so high. Even the Timberwolves, right? I mean, his production from that series last year was still insane, but they took enough of a chunk out of his efficiency. They dared him more as a jump shooter. Those are the little areas in which you can make Jokic just the littlest bit uncomfortable, and that can make a difference. But I do still think he'll have a monster box score series. Jamal Murray is a really interesting component here because he has had like a tale of 2 seasons.
Yeah, for real.
First half of the year, obviously, really, really concerning stuff. Second half of the year was really quite good offensively. And as you mentioned, just now coming back from this injury, When Jamal is really on as a pull-up jump shooter, there's not much anybody can do because it's just difficult shot making at such a high level. The Clippers do have one of the best defensive guards in basketball, though, Chris Dunn, really good screen navigator, physical defender. So that's a difficult matchup for Jamal. I don't know exactly what to expect from him because he was playing so well, and then he got the injury, and physically, I would agree he looked fine in the last couple games. He's such a rhythm player, though, and he can be so streaky. It scares me a little bit that he's going into the playoffs without really having had time to build that.
I'm a little more confident just because, like I said, he looks fresh, and the 15 games prior to him before the injury, and again, I get it, it's pre-injury, but he looked good, and he looked, and honestly, too,
it was the best he's played.
I don't want to give him
I
don't want to give him consolation points. These last 2 games, I felt like he was just off the back iron, and like he's getting to all his looks. He's just rimming out. He was so close, and that's why I think that if Jamal has a good game 1, he could have just a really good series because he is so rhythm-based. But there is an inherent volatility with Jamal and MPJ that you just have to – it lingers in the back of your mind and makes you worry because the Nuggets don't have that kind of margin with how limited the offensive personnel is around Jokic.
Well, what I thought you were going to say is they have no defensive margin because I think –
Well, I don't even know if I want to talk about that side of the ball for Denver because there's nothing – I don't think there's anything they can do to win possessions on that side of the ball. I don't know what they do.
That's obviously the big concern for them as a team, and that's the concern in this series because we're talking about these offensive things on the margins. I still think Denver's going to have a really good offensive series because they're a great offense. What concerns me is I see the ways in which the Clippers can make them a little uncomfortable, right, and provide a little bit of a challenge and maybe just take that little bit of a chunk out of Denver's offensive efficiency. When I look at the other side of the ball, the Clippers are playing amazing basketball, and specifically their star duo is playing incredibly well. Kawhi is in elite form now. Last 20 games, he's giving you 25.5 points on 62% true shooting. He is back as a top 12 level player. The strength, the ball handling, his self-assured pace, the shot making, it's all there in the exact form you want it going into the playoffs. And literally nobody has an answer for playoff Kawhi when he's on. He's one of the great playoff risers we've seen. A locked-in Aaron Gordon isn't a bad option to guard him at all, right? He's got the strength. He's got the size. I still don't think he can make Kawhi uncomfortable. He's that strong. He's that great as a shot maker. So I think he's going to be excellent again in this series just because I believe in Kawhi as a scorer that much, and he's been playing so well. I think the more problematic specific matchup for them, though, not the Clippers' best player, not the guy who's going to have the best series necessarily, but the specific matchup problem for Denver is James Harden. I know you're probably not going to want to say this, but Harden is playing his best basketball in years, man. Last 30 games, 25, 6, and 9 on 60% true shooting. Number 1 isolation scorer this season. Denver's guards cannot check him at all. Their point of attack defense is a huge limitation. There is nobody who can guard James Harden on an island and make him uncomfortable.
You wouldn't put Brown on him?
I'd put Brown on him. Not going to do anything.
I don't think it's going to do a whole lot, but I think he's better than Murray.
Yeah, it's not going to do much, though. And it's not just guarding him in isolation where he's so excellent. The Nuggets have no good answers for James Harden pick and roll. I actually went back and I rewatched all their matchups from this year, and I thought their best defensive coverage against Harden pick and roll was actually drop in DeAndre Jordan minutes. DeAndre Jordan, hopefully, it doesn't play more than 6 minutes a game in these playoffs.
I can't believe DeAndre Jordan came up in the preview.
Believe it or not, Logan, he's still their backup center in Big 2025. We've talked about the problems that the Nuggets have as a pick and roll defense overall, right? Their poor screen navigation, the fact that they have to bring Jokic up to the level because of their poor point of attack defense, and also because Jokic can't switch and he can't play conventional drop very well. So you bring him up to the level, but the problem is now you're putting 2 on the ball against James Harden, who's an exceptional playmaker.
What also sucks, too, is if you're going to tag the roll man and then the guy in the corner has to help off, say it's an Aaron Gordon on the help side, then you're leaving probably a 38% plus three-point shooter open.
So that's where I think If it's Chris Dunn in that corner, like
leave him,
abandon him.
Yeah,
that I think is like the key for Denver.
You tell me what you think. If it's Dunn, if it's Derrick Jones Jr.,
yes.
And dear God, if it's Ben Simmons, it's like I'm not even thinking about that guy. I'm
100%.
cheating. I'm cheating.
100%. And I think that has to be MPJ, who you match up with Dunn. So you figure Dunn is going to stay in that corner. Then MPJ can be the low man for you because I think you need Aaron Gordon on Kawhi. And you're just going to have to count on MPJ to make some plays, tagging rollers, right, using his size and length.
Recovering on closeouts, too.
Yeah, and it's like, am I the most confident in that? No. So I think Denver can play some of those 4-on-3s better than they did in the matchups against the Clippers earlier in the year. Because for the most part, when they brought Jokic up to the level, it was like free dunks for Zoo. Yeah. Like they were doing a terrible job of even tagging him. And like, that's literally the most valuable shot, man. You cannot just allow Harden to slip a little pocket pass into Zoo and then there's nobody to even meet him at the rim. Now, even if you do tag him, he's Zoo. He's huge. He's got insane touch. He's still going to be difficult to stop. But absolutely, you have to dedicate your low man to challenging him as opposed to worrying about a Chris Dunn shooter.
You either have to strip him going up or you have to force him to make that short roll kick out to the corner. Which, don't get me wrong,
well,
he's a good passer.
He's a solid passer. He's a solid passer. And obviously, if it's Norman Powell in that corner who he finds, well, that's a
bogey
problem. Or bogey.
Dude, that's what's crazy to me about the Clippers is – I guess I'll let the cat out of the bag on this one, too. I'm taking the Nuggets in 7.
Wow.
But the Clippers are way more dependable to me. They're way more reliable. I think just as a dependable team, I think top to bottom, they just far surpass Denver. And I think they have a far greater margin for error. I think more things can go wrong for LA and they can win than vice versa for Denver. Yeah. I think a lot of things have to go right for Denver to win, but I'm going to bet on the all-time historic player in Jokic.
I think the Clippers offense presents so many problems for the Nuggets defense. And we're talking about them bringing Jokic up to the level because that's what they normally do. That's what I expect them to do. Again, they have to be much sharper as a team defense, and frankly, their defensive personnel just isn't very good. Now, I've liked their energy since the Michael Malone firing and the Calvin Booth firing, honestly. I loved the quote from Jokic about the beast is most dangerous when he's threatened or whatever he said, some brilliant old Serbian saying probably. And I feel like the vibes have been better for them because the vibes were cratering. The energy has been there more defensively, but it's still just a personnel limitation against a pick-and-roll master who has a lot of really good play finishers around him. If it's Powell as a shooter, if it's Zoo off the roll, maybe they try Jokic in a true drop. At some point they did in the regular season for a stretch, but he's just a bad drop defender. Again, there's no rim protection. There's no deterrence there.
If you could run drop and still have your guard recover to the ball handler, I mean, it could work because you're not afraid of Zoo as a jump shooter, but it's
you don't trust him to stay attached.
Exactly. Man.
I agree. And I just think if you have a bad drop defensive big, and if you have bad screen navigation, this is James Harden. If he's comfortable, he will kill you with pull-up threes and floaters, and he gets in a mode where those floaters are layups for him, man.
I mean, that also, I'll just keep it a stack. Yeah, I mean, the inverse of this has a lot to do with my just vitriol and...
It's always good when you make your series picks based on vitriol, Logan. That's what I've always said. Personal biases and hatred.
No, there's definitely... I just couldn't pick the Clippers. My last key that I have written down here is how much does Kawhi Leonard play? And, I get it, Carson. I get it. I'm just not getting burned again. Maybe it's dumb. I'll be happy for the Clippers if they – I think they're the better team. Like I said, I think they're more impervious to matchups. Yes. I think they have more margin for error. I just don't – there's something in my soul that cannot bring me to believe that Kawhi Leonard is going to play 4 or more games in this series. And there is something in my soul that says James Harden is not going to be consistently great for 4+ games in a series. And so it might be my bias, but I'm not going to bet against that.
Listen, man, I can't say that that's not valid. What I would say is Kawhi has been healthy for an extended stretch and is playing awesome. James Harden has been playing his best basketball in years. And when we've seen him struggle in the playoffs, it's against teams
that can really
are super athletic and can give him problems on the perimeter. This is the defense of all of them in the playoff field that will offer the least resistance in that category. That's where I think this is actually probably going to be Harden's best playoff series in years, and Kawhi is just that fucking guy. I also think the Clippers' depth is better. Now, the backup center situation isn't ideal. I don't want Drew Eubanks playing playoff minutes, but I really like their wing group. And one huge key for Denver is going to be how those non-Jokic minutes go.
100p.
Because it always is, right? I think an underrated part of the 2023 title run is that the Nuggets were like even in non-Jokic minutes in that postseason. That's a huge thing. Normally in the regular season, they're like -10 net rating in those minutes. This season, they actually did improve with Jamal on the floor and Jokic off. Denver's only a -2.5 net team this year. The disaster has really been when both of them are off the floor, and Denver's like a -24 net team, which they should just never play those lineups if Jamal is healthy, and they won't in the playoffs. I fully believe Jamal or Jokic will be on the floor for all 48 minutes. So it'll be big if they can play close to even in those minutes. So obviously Denver can win this series, right? Like Jokic is the best player alive. Jamal Murray has a super high scoring ceiling. The spot-up guys can knock down shots. Brown, I don't trust, but he was an efficient three-point shooter this year. Aaron Gordon, I think, got a lot better as a shooter. So, like, their offense might just be unstoppable, and maybe they can reach a respectable enough level defensively. But the Clippers are playing amazing basketball, and they don't have a weakness like Denver does on the defensive end. And that's the thing. I think both these teams are excellent offenses. One actually has the ability to offer more resistance on the defensive end. And I like this matchup for them. They went 2-1 against the Nuggets when Jokic played this year without Kawhi Leonard setting foot on the floor. And like, it's regular season, but they played them really well without their best player. That does matter to me. James Harden is probably the key to this series. He probably is. He doesn't have to give you 25 a game on 60%.
He's got to manufacture the looks, though.
He's got to create a lot of good offense. He can't have some of the clunkers that he did a couple years ago in the playoffs with the Sixers, for example, even though he also had a couple 40 pieces. But that volatility that is still a concern with him, but less so with how well he's playing right now, and especially in this matchup. So I am going to go Clippers in a tight 6. I want to go 7, but I'm going to go 6. Jokic honestly has such a good chance of just carrying them to a Game 7 or carrying them to win the whole series, but the Clippers are the better team. I'm a Clippers believer. I actually really like both these teams right now. Obviously, Denver had a lot of struggles down the stretch. I felt like they found something. I felt like their identity came together in those final 3 games of the season, but that doesn't overwrite some of the fundamental personnel issues they have defensively. But at least I feel better about like their energy and culture. I just think the Clippers are great. I've been saying for most of this year, Logan, I love the Clippers. I think that they're one of the 3 best teams in the West, and I'm sticking by it.
I like it. We both had our heels dug in on the Clippers for a long time. Yeah. I've been negative. You've been positive.
You're the yin to my yang, man.
Yeah, man.
And I need you.
Gotta have it. Jokic has such an insane burden on him in this series, as he does every single game of his career. But I'm betting on him. I think he's the best player in this series, and ultimately, it's my faith in the stars. I have the ultimate faith in Nikola Jokic doing what he needs to do to win his team basketball games. And
we know how you feel about James Harden.
I don't believe in healthy Kawhi. I don't believe in James Harden. I've had this stance for a long time now. I'm not backing down. So I'm going to say Nuggets in 7.
If Kawhi's body breaks down again, I can't be surprised, but I will be so sad. It would just genuinely bum me out.
I will say this,
so much.
and this may hedge my bets or whatever. If Kawhi stays healthy, it's not a large percent, but there is a chance that the Clippers could get out of the West. They're a great team.
They're really good.
They're a great basketball team.
Yeah.
I hope that Kawhi is healthy this year. I want to see it because he is such a monster when he's available. It just, it feels like you just get robbed as a fan every single year when he shows you that he's capable of doing this top 10 to top 8 stuff, and you never get to see it where it matters most.
I am interested in what Chris Dunn does in this series because I do think he's going to be tested as a shooter, and I think that is not good for the Clippers. I love their starting 4 around him so much, but I do think he is the most exploitable player on this roster, playing a key role for sure. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are, with all the new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From monster slams to dishing the rock to cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of NBA player props.
Ready to place your first bet? Try betting on something simple like picking how many points your favorite player will have. Go to the DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your pick. First timers, here's something special just for you. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly.
Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Sorry, guys, we're back. I think that we just lost video basically for that Clippers Nuggets segment. Unfortunately, camera just stopped recording at some point, and we're not in our normal element, so we apologize for that, but things should be back up and running as normal. Now, let's move to the East, Logan, where we have a rematch of a first-round playoff series from last year, actually. In the 4-5, we've got Pacers-Bucks. The bummer of this for Milwaukee fans is, of course, last year you didn't have Giannis. This year you don't have Dame. But what's the first key that stands out to you for this series?
That is a big component for me about Milwaukee and their chances to win this series. Can they overcome the loss of Damian Lillard? Now, Dame was not great in the head-to-head matchups with Indiana this season. He averaged just 18, but he did give you 9 assists per game, but pretty inefficient. He did make 6 threes in their last matchup, but, I mean, it's just hard. The Bucks invested so much into this. You know what I mean? You gave up on Drew Holiday. You made the Kyle Kuzma trade banking that Damian Lillard was going to be available and was going to play at a star level in the playoffs, and now you've lost that. They do have the X factor, though, and that's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Yeah. Giannis is still a top 3 player on the planet, and he's super dominant. And I don't really think Indiana has any opportunity to slow him down. I don't know what they do. In 4 games versus Indiana this year, he gave you 30, 12, and nearly 8 on nearly 68% true shooting. The Bucks are on a 7-game winning streak, and I just think he's going to eviscerate Miles Turner one-on-one. If that's the look that they give him, he's going to barrel through him.
I think it's going to be Siakam.
Yeah, fat fucking chance. Good luck, Siakam. I mean, dude, he's going to roll through whoever they give him. Giannis averaged 19.5 points in the paint per game this year and shot 75% in the restricted area. Now that Giannis has added this elite mid-range counter to his game, he's become really freaking hard to guard, because you'll notice with anybody who's defending him around that free throw area, they're dropping off because you're not going to let him get to the rim because that's a free bucket. So you're going to concede that mid-range jumper, but he's shooting it at over a 44% clip this year. So it's a decently efficient shot, especially for a guy like Giannis. I think that they're really going to struggle to contain him as a roll man, too. I don't know who's running that pick-and-roll offense for Milwaukee, but if you can get him with a little bit of a runway, because mostly it was Dame, there's going to be no help side rim protector. I think he's going to eat on that. I don't think there's a good answer for him, man. I think Turner on Giannis with no help, I think Giannis is going to destroy him. I think if you go Siakam on Giannis with Turner on help side, I think Giannis is going to plow through his man, but it's also going to leave probably Brook Lopez open on the back end, and he's going to make off of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the other options. It's like, what are we going to put Ben Mather in or Nesmith or Obi Toppin on Giannis? Sure, man. No. Let's just let him walk into 30 points. So my keys, what I would try to do against Giannis, I'd try to keep him out of the paint as much as possible, obviously. I'd pack it up. I'd load it up and force him to settle for as many mid-range days as possible. Like I said, it's a really good counter for Giannis now, but it's still the shot that you want him taking. It's very similar to Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards has 2 superpowers, his shots at the rim and his three-pointers. So when you can get him in that mid-range area, you're okay with that as a defense. And then you just got to sell out on shooters around him. Keep him out of the paint and sell out on shooters. I think you try to make life as difficult as possible on the supporting cast and try to limit Giannis's impact as a playmaker. You know, because Dame is out, it gives you a focal point if you're the Indiana defense, and that focal point is Giannis. Honestly, you know what I would try to do on the other end?
What?
I'd try to foul Giannis out. I would try to attack him defensively. Like, my thing we get Giannis out of a game, game's over. The Bucks have no chance of winning. So
attack Giannis defensively is a tough
it's definitely not the smartest one, but like if you could get him in foul trouble like in the first quarter, I would.
What about just trying to take a charge every possession?
I mean, literally, I'm just trying to get him off the floor. And then also with Indiana, I know he's been a little bit better recently. The guy I'm looking at to help off of all series long is probably Kyle Kuzma. And that's where I'm going to try to crash driving lanes and poke balls loose on Giannis drives. Or just if I'm going to throw a double team, I'm probably willing to help more off of Kyle Kuzma. But this really isn't the big thing for Indiana. Indiana's not really a defensive team anyway with who they, how they play and no matter what the matchup is. But the first thing is what they do with Giannis, and I just think you try to limit his impact as much as possible. Try to keep him out of the paint, sell out on shooters, and just make life difficult. You're never going to stop or completely limit a guy like Giannis, but you just try to slow him down a little bit.
I think the Bucks offense is still going to be really hard for the Pacers to stop, even without Damian Lillard in this series, because Giannis is very clearly at his best individually without Dame, and the Bucks team offense has been really, really good in those minutes. This year, with Giannis on the floor without Dame, they're a +9 net team, and the reason for that is they have an elite offensive rating in those minutes, a 123 offensive rating. They're also 11-5 when Giannis plays without Dame. Most of those games are against like pretty shitty teams, but still, they've been playing really good offensive basketball. And the reason why is pretty intuitive. Like, without Dame on the floor, you can just play full-on Giannis ball. You just have point Giannis, and he runs as much inverted pick and roll and initiates as much as he wants to off the dribble and is just able to get downhill with a bunch of shooters around him and nobody else who wants to carry that ball handling responsibility. Lots of space around him, lots of opportunities to attack an early offense, and his passing is so good now, has developed to such a high level over the last couple of years that if guys around him can just make their outside shots, that offense is incredibly difficult to stop. And since Dame got hurt, the Bucks have still been a good three-point shooting team. They're 12th in threes made and 4th in three-point percentage since Dame went down. You mentioned the one key guy who has been significantly better in that stretch, but who I still have a lot of concerns about as a shooter, and that's Kyle Kuzma. Last 15 games, he's making 37% of his threes, taking more than 5 a game. Up to that point on the year, though, he was, 28% from three? He was having a horrible shooting season. So that's a concern, but their offense has been really good, and I do like this formula of Giannis heliocentrism. Let him create everything, because the Pacers have nothing for him, Logan.
No.
He's been great as of late. The Bucks offense has been great as of late. The Indiana Pacers are like the most helpless versus Giannis Antetokounmpo that maybe any team is against any player in basketball. You mentioned his stats this year, bro. They undersell him. Last 15 games versus Indiana. Let's get a bigger sample size. Giannis averages 36, 12.5, and 6.5 on 71% true shooting. He's
the greatest basketball player ever.
He has dropped 50 on them 3 different times. All of those on 70+% shooting from the field. It's his best matchup in the league. They just don't have the big bodies to deal with him. He just goes through them. So I think both teams are going to have very good offensive series, even though the Bucks are down Dame. The thing is, I think Indiana's also going to play really well offensively. So what do you think about what stands out when you look at the other side of the ball in Indiana's offense?
That's the exact difference to me, Carson. It's Tyrese Haliburton, and I am betting on Tyrese Haliburton in this elite Pacers offense. I think this is going to be a really close series, specifically because the Pacers don't have an answer for Giannis, and I think Giannis is just going to will this team to a win or two.
Yeah.
So I think it goes 6 or 7. I think it's really, really competitive, but I am going to side on Indiana, and it's my belief in Haliburton. He is so good at consistently creating advantages, and I think I even have underrated like Haliburton into. I think I would have him higher in my rankings than where we did before, and I've been the biggest Haliburton guy on the planet, but his impact really doesn't show fully in the box score, man. Every fucking game I watch from Haliburton, you really have to see to believe. He's like Santa Claus. You got to see him to believe it, man.
Yep, and I've been saying that.
He is so good at creating these advantages, but more importantly, he's so great at capitalizing on the advantages. And the initial advantages that don't even appear in the stat sheet. He's a brilliant passer and playmaker. when you're talking about like hit-ahead passes in transition. And what I love about Indiana and Haliburton specifically, you only see this when guys have played together for a really long time. Every single time Haliburton gets a rebound, the guy running up in transition is looking like a receiver over his shoulder. Every second that guy that gets out on the break and sprints is waiting for that ball to hit him in a perfect spot. Haliburton's like Josh Allen or Mahomes hitting a receiver up the sideline right in his pocket to get to the end zone, and they're getting to the cup. And that's just that chemistry stuff that other teams aren't going to have, and it's such a unique skill set that only the great playmakers have. And that's just in transition, where Haliburton's awesome. In the half court, he is a genius. What I love about Haliburton in the half court is his ability to move two defenders instead of one. If you're running a pick and roll, say on one side of the basketball court than the other, that second guy will help off a lot off of the corner. And that's where Hallie is one of the best skip passers, or if he's not the best, because there's Jokic and there's Luka, obviously. If he's not the best, he is one of the best skip passers in basketball. And that's where I think the Pacers have the edge. It's like neither of these teams are going to be able to really stop the other team's offense. So whose offense is more unstoppable? I think it's Indiana, and it largely starts with Haliburton. I look at Tyrese Haliburton as like a boxer that always has you on the ropes. If you make a mistake, he's going to make you pay. And I think he can do that almost as great as any offensive player in basketball, man. He's such an elite playmaker, man. He's one of the best playmakers I've seen, one of the best passers. He's so cerebral. He's so smart. And that's what I held against him. I held against him the fact that he's not an elite scorer. And I think I've held that way too much against Haliburton, and I haven't fully appreciated his ability to just consistently churn out elite offense with his playmaking and passing, and he's still a great shooter on top of that. And so that's a difference to me. Yeah. It's Tyrese Haliburton. People like to clown on the guy. People like to hate on him because he's a joyous, happy guy, I guess.
God forbid.
Yeah, God forbid him.
Yep. Well, not a white boy, Logan.
He's not a white boy. God forbid a dude catches a vibe, bruh. I just believe in the Pacers' offense more, man. That's a difference. It's a faith in Tyrese Haliburton bet, and I'm willing to die on that hill. And it's not just Hallie. It's the fact that there's really good offensive players all around him in this offense, but all of those offensive players are enhanced by Tyrese Haliburton, and they get such great looks manufactured because of him. And so it just makes your job easier. If it's Turner, if it's Siakam, if it's Nembhard, if it's McConnell, whoever it is, Haliburton makes everybody around him better. He's one of the game's best amplifiers, and so that's why I'm taking the Pacers to win this series.
I love a little Hallie glaze, man. I think specifically in this matchup, though, Brook Lopez is going to have a rough time. Brook Lopez always has a rough time against the Indiana Pacers because he is as true of a drop big as there is. His feet are in cement, but he's still big and he can still protect the rim, but cannot move out in space, has to play drop, and he is trying to do that against a Tyrese Haliburton, Miles Turner pick-and-pop attack. One of the best pick-and-pop bigs in basketball, one of the best pull-up three-point shooters, and one of the best floater shot makers in basketball. You're conceding the exact shots that those guys want. So what Milwaukee does a lot to compensate for that is they have Brook play drop, but then they have a defender from the weak side wing rotate over so that Turner isn't open off the pop, but then obviously that just frees up a shooter somewhere else. And this is not only a team that is led by one of the best passers in basketball and the guy who I've called the best decision maker in basketball, Tyrese Haliburton, one of the best ball moving teams in basketball, one of the best at making the extra pass. So they're going to get a ton of open threes if they run pick and roll at Brook Lopez. That's just the reality. I don't know exactly who it's going to be. That'll depend on the play, but somebody's going to get an open three. I don't think they will move Brook off of Miles Turner and put him on Siakam to get Giannis matched up with Turner because Siakam was matched up with Brook for a good portion of the playoff series last year, and he just cooked him. He was 17 of 26 when guarded by Brook Lopez. He's just too quick for that matchup. And also, it's not like he's an answer to like, oh, now we can just play normal drop and leave him off the pop because he's not as great a jump shooter as Turner. But Siakam's 38% on above the break threes this year.
I wouldn't want to test Siakam either.
Don't want to leave him. He's made a huge improvement there. And his ability to beat Brook off the bounce, to leverage his quickness to get really open mid-range jumpers for himself, like, It's just a really, really tough series to find a spot for Brook defensively. He's also super slow against this elite transition offense.
Exactly.
That's really hard. So ideally, you would like for this to be a series where Brook plays less if you're Milwaukee. And I wonder if their solution for that they try is a switch everything lineup where you have Kuz and Giannis as your 4-5. You put Giannis on Turner, you put Kuz on Siakam. That's definitely not a perfect solution because, like, Turner is a pretty good mismatch attacker with his size and his shooting ability. Siakam is an excellent mismatch attacker. He's so good at posting up smaller players and beating them with the spin move or touch shot making. So, like, those guys will probably find the smallest player on the floor and punish you for doing that. But if you're switching everything, you're obviously quicker in that lineup, and at least you're not just letting Hallie dissect his favorite coverage, because Hallie loves seeing drop. He's going to make the right reads. It allows him to get to all of his favorite shots. If you switch Kuz onto him, okay, Kuz can guard Hallie out in space, right? That's not going to be an easy matchup for him to get a step. Same goes for Giannis. And now maybe that means that it's a more favorable matchup for Miles Turner, Pascal Siakam. Maybe they can punish AJ Green or whoever was guarding Hallie on that possession. But it's at least worth trying that, in my opinion, because I feel like you know what the outcome is with Brook having to play drop, and it's not a very good one. So I think no matter what, the Bucks are going to struggle to get stops against the Pacers, and I think both teams are going to have good offensive series. Pacers just have more good basketball players, man. Like, I trust all of their starters to fill their roles at a high level, and they have excellent depth. When I look at the group around Giannis, yes, they've been winning games as of late. So much of that is just because of Giannis, though. Yeah. And, like, I really don't trust anybody around him. The Bucks have not built a good roster, and then they lost their second-best player by far from this not good roster. And even though I do think that Giannis is at his best individually without Dame on the floor, he has to be Hercules, man. Like, we're talking about a carry job needed from him to win this series. And the guys around him have to make a lot of shots. They don't have to create, but they have to make shots. And I just have too many concerns. When I think about the matchup problems for Brook, I'm very worried about Kuz's shot just falling off again, because this 15-game stretch doesn't move me off of a horrible shooting season. Ryan Rollins has been good for them. This is a big stage for him to be coming in as a starter, filling an important role. And although I like the Giannis ball, it does concern me when you have one creator in a playoff series, and they have no creation other than Giannis from their starters. And then I also think the minutes with Giannis off the floor are going to be rough. Like, KPJ has been filling that role pretty well.
KPJ's actually been playing pretty well with Milwaukee.
He's been playing really well, but I don't really trust that. I think a lot of times he's inefficient. He's not a good decision maker.
He's streaky.
Very streaky. I know what I'm getting with the Pacers at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And I do not with the Bucks outside of Giannis.
Yeah, that's basically where I come down with this series as well, man. You say Herculean. I mean, I just think all of that you mentioned would have to go right. I think they'd have to shoot the lights out. I think Giannis would have to have a monster series. And I think Indiana would have to just play uncharacteristically bad offensively. It's just too many things.
Yeah.
And now that Dame is out, more specifically, I think the biggest thing that you mentioned is that because of that, you're asking your role players to step up and play above their means. I'm not saying it's impossible. Nothing's impossible. I wouldn't, nothing really shocks me in sports anymore, dude. We see crazy upsets all the time. This just seems like a little bit too much of a mountain to climb. So yeah. I think Giannis gets them a pair of games, but I think the Pacers win in 6.
I think Giannis goes crazy. I think he gets them 2 games as well. I'm going Pacers in 6, and this 6 feels different to me from the first 2. Where those are tight 6, and I could really, really see it going either way.
Agreed.
This one,
I'm closer to Pacers in 5.
Maybe the Bucks have a 20% chance to win just because Giannis is that good, but the Pacers are a much better basketball team. And I'll also say I regret having the Knicks over them when we did our contender rankings.
Indiana?
I regret having the Knicks over Indiana. Because both these teams are elite offenses. At least the Pacers have a chance defensively, and the Knicks don't.
I agree.
So I regret that because I think the Pacers are really good. I think they're the more complete team. Their depth is better. And Giannis is going to give them hell, but they're just a significantly better team top to bottom. Last first-round series, Logan, Pistons-Knicks. This is going to be a fun one. We're in New York right now. We walked past MSG yesterday. That was fun. Feeling the energy. What's the first key that stands out to you in this series?
What do you get from this Pistons offense? I think is really, really interesting. I'm super excited for this matchup. I know a lot of people have been really negative about Pistons-Knicks. They're saying, Pistons are going to get swept. They're not ready for this.
People being a bummer about the NBA?
Shocker.
People hating the new kids on the block for no reason? What?
I think the Pistons can win this series. I'm not going to pick it, but I think there's a chance. I think they have real physicality, size, and athletic advantages over New York. I think when you look at the matchup specifically with Cade and Jalen Brunson, I think Cade could move Brunson around a little bit and get to some spots. I think Jalen Duren.
But they're not going to put Brunson on Cade.
You don't think so? Where do you hide Brunson? Shooter?
Hide Brunson on anybody other than Cade, man. Yeah. I mean, they'll put Mikal on Cade. I'm pretty confident. They might put OG on him.
I think that's smarter because I would sell out on Cade Cunningham. That's probably my goal if I'm the Knicks. Yeah. But I think Jalen Duren versus Cat on the low block. I think you've got an athletic and physical. And there's some athletes here. Like this Pistons team is – I know people are shocked and surprised because they went from so low to in the playoffs, like in the heart of the playoffs. But it's not really that shocking when you improve this much across the board in your talent. And the athlete that I did mention, you got Asar Thompson, who is one hell of a defender in a transition presence. It's like now they have shooting with Tobias Harris and Tim Hardaway and Malik Beasley. So the Pistons are way better. I do have a real lack of faith in the skill and self-creation of Detroit's supporting cast, though. Like you just mentioned with Giannis and his burden, I think Cade has a massive burden to create offense. Specifically, because the Knicks are going to be able to sell out on Cade and because I don't think you can afford off-shooting nights from anybody. Like, I think you need your shooters spraying. If it's Toby, if it's Tim, if it's Malik, everybody's got to be on. I think you need blistering hot shooting series from the surrounding pieces. I think you need Cade to be on. And I think you need this defense to really disrupt New York. But it's a lot. And ultimately, I have the ultimate faith in the Knicks closing games out. That's the real big difference for me and why I favor New York slightly in this series. I think if we're looking at both sides of the basketball, Detroit could arguably be considered better just because of the massive gap that I think there is between these two teams and their defense. But I think there's also a very large gap in the offenses, and that's where I lean New York. Some of it has to do with experience, where this is a young Pistons team and it's their first real playoff experience, which I worry about a little bit. But it more has to do with the Knicks personnel. Jalen Brunson was your clutch player of the year. It has been a lead in the clutch this year, is just one of those guys that I know in crunch time is going to deliver. Like, Brunson is just one of those guys, man. I don't worry about the stage or the moment with Brunson. He's the man.
Yeah.
Cat, I have way more faith in this year. Has that playoff experience now, but also had a career year offensively and is an offensive heaven compared to the situation he was in last year. And OG Anunoby has been balling. And so there's just more guys I trust in New York. And I hate being a little more brief about this series, but it is a little bit more straightforward to me. Because of the Knicks veterans, because of my faith in them closing games out. And I think that could be the case in this series. If it goes 5, if it's a sweep, if it goes 6, no matter what happens, I think a lot of these games could be neck and neck in the third quarter, and they get decided in the fourth where it's just whose offense is better. And that's where I do lean advantage Knicks. So I'm going to take the Knicks in 6, but I'm going to say it with this caveat. I'm closer to Knicks in 7 than I am Knicks in 5.
Who do you think starts between Schroeder and Asar? Because Asar's been starting every game for like a long stretch now, but as good as he is, and I actually think him guarding Brunson would be awesome. I think he's a phenomenal point of attack defender, and I think specifically that exact archetype of elite athlete, bigger guy, great length, can give Brunson more challenges, right? Force him to make difficult shots over the top of them, apply some back pressure with their length out of pick and roll. But I do really, really worry about his offense in this series, and I worry about Detroit not having a single ball handler other than Cade in their starting 5.
What concerns you more, the ball handling or the fact that they have 2 non-shooters on the floor in Duren and Asar?
Both concern me a lot.
I mean, both concern me as well. Yeah. I wouldn't want to. Who are you starting for Asar?
I'm saying that they would go Schroeder because I think that Cade, THJ, Duren, Tobias, they're locks. I think all those guys have started like every single game this year. then I think you're choosing between Schroeder and Ausar.
I'd start Ausar.
Really?
I mean, not that Ausar gives you Ausar has his drawbacks.
I mean, obviously, then you have the ease of like Schroeder is your ball handler in the non-Cade minutes, so I can see that argument.
I think you stagger. I think you give some Schroeder and Cade overlap, but I would start Ausar and then I would feel it out. Honestly, I would see if he's. Honestly, what's probably more important is just what the Knicks' game plan is. Because if the Knicks come out and their game plan is to leave Ausar wide open,
well, that's what I'm thinking,
Ausar is bricking threes, then I think you have to move off of him. But I would roll with Ausar to start. I think he's a really good defender, a disruptive one. I think he's a really good rebounder. And I really like Ausar in transition as a ball handler, as a play finisher, and as a decision maker. But it's just like he is going to be limited in the half court in a way that another guy off your bench might not. So I think I would keep that in my back pocket.
Yeah, and it's like Schroeder, ever since he left the Nets this year, hasn't been playing very efficient offense, hasn't been shooting the ball well.
He's going to knock down some shots,
And obviously is a guy who likes to have the ball in his hands a lot. So you're probably right. And like Ausar, he's not a man. We know how I feel about a man. But like he is such a great cutter still. And his athleticism is so overwhelming that it's like he has an ability to have that real off-ball impact, even though he is obviously a 0 as a shooter. It just concerns me having 2 0 shooters on the floor, not having another player who I'm really comfortable with handling and creating an advantage, because I just think Cade is going to see multiple bodies for this entire series, and I think they're going to test everybody around him. And they have shooting, right? You get a lot of shooting from a couple guys like THJ and Malik Beasley, and then they also have their total non-shooters who I just think are going to be tested offensively in this series a lot. And I think Cade is still going to get his, and I think he'll do well as a playmaker, but I think there's going to be a lot of turnovers. I think the scoring efficiency is going to be pretty low. And to be fair, those are the things he struggles with in the regular season. But I think when an entire defense's sole attention is you in a playoff series, and it's your first time there, I think that is going to be a bit of a struggle for him.
It sucks, too. You know, Jaden Ivey got hurt earlier this year. And, I'm not saying he would
it would have been huge for a playoff series, I think, because the Pistons played their best basketball after Ivey got hurt. But having another offensive threat like that on the floor in a playoff series matters.
I still have stock in Ivey, man. I still think Ivey can be something in this league. I don't know if it's going to be as a star guard or as a sixth man or what the role is going to look like. But I think he's going to be a really productive and winning and impactful basketball player. But specifically, it does suck that you don't even just having a guy that can take any of that little bit of pressure off of Cade's shoulders would be really helpful. So, do you think this is done in 5?
No, I would go 6. But again, it's like a different feeling where first 2, I would set the over/under for how long the series goes at 6.5. Last 2, I would set it at 5.5. So I'm landing on 6 with all of them, which is kind of funny, but they feel like different 6s. It feels like one is a 6 bordering on a 7. That's what the first couple are, and the others in the East are 5, 6 border is what
I'm closer to 7 with this one, though. I think it's going to be a really competitive series.
I do think that Cade will do pretty well because at the end of the day, he is an excellent passer, and it's really difficult to take away his offensive scoring arsenal because we talk about the fact that he doesn't manufacture the easiest stuff for himself, right, with his finishing issues. But at the same time, he's so big, he's so strong, and he's so good as a tough shot maker that he can kind of get those same shots in any matchup. Like, Mikal can't take that away from him, you know? Cade has a strength advantage there. They're equal in terms of height, and I think that Cade will be able to get himself some good shots in isolation, but I do think that he's going to see defensive coverages that are dramatically slanted towards him, and I think the Pacers' offensive supporting cast around him is honestly probably underrated. Like Malik Beasley, great pickup. Tobias Harris has had a really good season, but it's still one of the weaker offensive supporting casts in the playoff field for sure.
If the Knicks leave one on the table, if this is not a Pistons team that I expect to let that pass them by, I think if the Knicks are having an off game, I just think this is hard. I just think this is a different Detroit. They're not going to roll over.
No. They're absolutely not going to roll over. I just have a lot of faith in the Knicks offense and struggle to see how the Pistons really make them uncomfortable. Like, I think Ausar could really make Brunson work hard, although I don't think that they tried that matchup a lot in the regular season, if I remember correctly. I'd like to see that. But in totality, like, I think Cat is going to get his in this series. And the Knicks offense is just so good. They're spacing, they're cutting. They don't shoot a ton of threes, but they're a very good shooting team. I just have a lot more faith in their collective offense than I do the Pistons. And even though I do think the Pistons are the better defensive team, the margin, the advantage they have there does not offset it, vice versa. And we talked about this earlier, but you get to a clutch situation, I just know who I'm trusting. I'm trusting the team that has not only the best player on the floor, but clearly the most aggregate offensive talent, 100%. And that is the Knicks. So I'm going to go New York in 6. Let's talk about these play-in games real quick, Logan. We don't even have that much time before the 7-8 games start, so we won't spend too long on this. But let's start with the 7-8 game out west, Warriors-Grizzlies. Warriors, of course, got bounced into this bracket with their loss to the Clippers in what was an insane game. What are you thinking for this one?
Yeah, we're going to be locked in on this one. I think the Warriors are better. The caveat that I will add against Memphis is that this is a jumbo-sized basketball team, and that's going to be the most interesting dynamic, I think, to watch in this game tonight. Edey and Triple J specifically against whatever lineup the Warriors are going to run with. Do you need to have Kevon Looney out there to match them physically? Do you just say, screw that, we're going to make Edey and Triple J defend in space, and we're going to run small ball 5 with Dre out there and spray threes? That's what I'm looking for in this matchup. Memphis, to me, has been spiraling a little bit more since the Taylor Jenkins firing. Yeah. I've lost a little bit of faith in them. But it's an interesting matchup. I could see them out-physicaling and overwhelming the Warriors with their size. But I'm going to take the Dubs.
I'm going to take the Dubs as well. We saw this just a few games ago, and the most interesting part of it to me is the Edey minutes, because there were some possessions where, like, Steph is just frying him in drop, fries him off of a switch, but at the same time, like, Edey had 16 boards in that game. He had 4 blocks. He was efficient as a scorer. They won his minutes. They were plus 13 in his minutes, even though they lost the game. So if I'm Memphis, like, I think I'm riding with the 2 big lineup, man. It's been their best
look. It's a secret weapon, yeah.
Plus 14 net in those minutes. Exactly. They dominate the glass. Their rim protection is insane, and it's like, yeah, obviously Edey guarding in space is a huge problem, but at least we can dominate in those physicality and size-based categories, which I feel like they kind of need as part of their path to winning this game.
Counter to that, Golden State, I'd try to foul Edey's big ass out or get him in foul trouble early.
I mean, I think they're just going to attack him and try to get him in space as much as they can. Like, I think both teams just throw your best punch. For the Warriors, that's going small. For the Grizzlies, that's going huge. I think it's actually a really fun contrast.
I do too.
I think the Warriors are the better basketball team at the end of the day. I think they'll be able to weaponize their speed advantage to create enough open looks from 3. They took 56 threes in the last meeting between these two teams, and they made 22 of them. I think they're going to continue to get those shots. I think you get Jimmy in a do-or-die format kind of game. I think that he steps up and you get the best version of him. Pods has been playing so well as of late. And like you said, Grizzlies have really regressed defensively. Their whole identity is jumbled right now. It's always possible. Ja goes crazy.
It's one game, you know?
It's one game. Yeah. Anything can happen. It could be just 3-point shooting variance. I do think also, though, Draymond can do a really, really good job on Triple J when they're matched up. So,
especially with his hands.
Hands, strength. I'm going to go Warriors in this one as confidently as you can reasonably say for one game between 2 good teams. But I do think the Warriors are clearly better. Okay, how about Magic Hawks?
I'm going to take Orlando, actually. I think I just prefer Orlando's defense size and athleticism, and that's what I'm going to bet on. Trey scares me. Like, that's really the big difference in this game to me is, like, faith in the offensive creators. But Orlando's just so jumbo-sized. They've been such a good defense, even though they've been without Suggs. They're really big. They're really athletic, and I think they're just going to physically overwhelm Atlanta a little bit.
I tend to agree. I think Paolo has been playing much better as of late. I don't think Atlanta has an answer for him physically. I think Orlando's just the better basketball team. I think there's a crazy burden on Trey, and it's possible that he just goes absolutely insane and he wins them the game basically single-handedly. But I prefer Orlando's team defense by far. I prefer their size. I prefer their athleticism. I prefer their rebounding. They have multiple dudes who are those high-level offensive threats. Now, could be that Orlando melts down offensively, right? Could be that Paolo is taking tough shots. Franz isn't at his best. He's not his most aggressive. The shooting is bad. We've seen all this stuff happen to Orlando time and time again. They're a bad offense, like they are. But they're a great defense. In Atlanta, just as a team, their talent is limited, man. They lost a lot of their best players around Trey, and expectations weren't even that high for them coming into the year. So I'm going to take Orlando in this one. Super quick. Let's talk about the 9-10 games. In the East, we have Bulls-Heat.
I'm going to take the Bulls. The Heat haven't won a game against them all year. It's pretty simple as that to me. I don't know. Miami's interesting, but I think Chicago has slightly more offensive firepower, and I think that's what I'm going to lean on in this game.
Yeah, they have more offensive firepower. They've been playing better as of late.
Give me Kobe White in that do or die. So you're going to drop a 50-piece on them.
Kobe White's going to go crazy. Logan Camden said it here first.
50-piece.
I mean, for the Bulls, this is their Super Bowl, man. This is all they get up for.
They ain't got
every
nothing,
year.
man. I feel bad for Bulls fans.
Well, this is their Super Bowl, bro. They're talking themselves into this recent
and then
stretch. So this is it.
Who's the one seed? Who are they marching?
Oh,
to
they're
the
going to
death
play
sentence against?
they're going to play the Cleveland Cavaliers if they can get through, which I don't think they will. I think it'll be Magic and Hawks in the playoffs for real once we get there. How about out west, Kings Mavs?
I think Sacramento. I don't know. This one I'm the most conflicted on out of these 4 play-in games. Is
Yeah.
AD going to play? Do we have that confirmed?
Yeah, AD's going to play.
Fuck, man. I really like Dallas with AD, but Kyrie's not going to be out there.
Let me confirm that AD is going to play.
Give me the Kings. I'm going to bet on DeMar and Levine and that offensive firepower. The Kings frustrate me to no end, but I'll bet on
Yeah.
DeMar and Levine in a one-game format.
Yeah, AD is so damn good, and the Mavs' collective defense is really good.
Man. They could just overwhelm Sacramento.
They could dominate on the glass, but the Kings have more collective offensive talent by a lot. I'll pick them as well. Kind of boring picking all the 7s over the 8s and the 9s over 10s, but whatever, man. Sometimes that's just how it goes. I will say, if either the Warriors or Grizzlies miss out on the playoffs, for real,
I'm going to be ticked.
I'll be pissed.
I'm going to be ticked.
I love the plan. I think it's awesome, but I've said since they introduced it as an idea, it should only be triggered if there is a gap of 5 games or fewer in the standings.
Completely.
I just think 48-win team should not have to play a 39-win team in a 1-game play-in for their season when they were better all year.
They're just in different tiers.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I would put Golden State probably in a higher tier than Memphis, but relatively, they're on the same playing field.
Oh, and they have the same record, right?
Dallas and Sacramento aren't close
No.
to me. And more importantly than that, they're just not legitimate playoff teams. And so if that happens, I'm just going to feel shortchanged that we didn't get the best.
I agree.
That's the one thing about the play-in I don't like. I like it as a concept. I think it can work, but I completely agree with you. I think it should be, you got to be within a certain amount of games.
And I saw some interesting counterpoints. Jason said his argument would be if you aren't good enough in the regular season to lock up a top 6 seed, well, then tough luck. Like, you've basically just put yourself in a spot where you're subject to being part of, like, the entertainment machine at this point, right? If your expectation is to go out there and contend, well, then you should have locked up a top 6 seed in the regular season, and now, like, we get to have the entertainment that comes from the play-in. I understand that. I also saw Matt Sponhour say something along the lines of, like, a 2 seed is already way better than a 7 seed, and I think what he was trying to say is, like, there's a big gap between those 2 teams, and yet they have to play. But, like, first of all, this is how the playoff format's always been. It's always been 8 teams who get their spot. And, like, obviously, you just have to draw the line somewhere. At which point is a team not worth competing for the title? And I would say if there's a 39-win team and there are 48-win teams in that conference in the 8 seed, the 48-win teams have created enough of a distance throughout the regular season that we can say they're clearly better and they deserve the opportunity. And the big thing is the 2 seed doesn't have to play the 7 seed in a 1-game format. They play them in a best-of-7 game series where the best team is going to win basically every time. In a 1-game format, compared to an 82-game sample where there's a big gap, anything could happen.
My counter to the 6 seed point, how many games are the 3
Exactly.
How many games are the 3 seed and 7 seed separated by?
2. This year in the West, which is an outlier. But this is what I'm saying. It only applies when there's a significant gap. I love the play-in. It's great. And listen, the teams in the East obviously suck.
I think it should vary. I think sometimes we should have the 7 involved. But if the 7's got a big enough advantage over the 8, then maybe they don't even get involved. Maybe it's just 8, 9, and 10 or something.
Yeah.
Like
there's a bunch of ways you could figure it out, right? Like if it's only the 8 and 9 who are within that range, the 9 seed just has to beat the 8 seed twice.
That's how I think it makes more sense like that.
There are modifications you can make to it, and I would support that. But, hey, I like the plan. I'm excited that we get to see it. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. Hope you are as excited for the playoffs as we are. I cannot wait to watch all of these series actually go down. And, Logan, I can't wait to get back to our hotel room tonight. You and I have bunk beds in our room.
Yes, sir.
We found bunk beds in New York.
More room for activities.
We got hella room for activities. Logan keeps trying to crawl into the bottom bunk, and I won't let him. Well, it's true. You're the one who's doing it.
You're supposed to tell anybody, bro.
Well, it's my lived experience. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. We will be back to our normal setups on Thursday. So Thursday, we will preview the 2-7 series. We will preview the remaining final play-in games. Friday night, we'll go live after the play-in games. We'll preview the 1-8 series. We'll talk about the play-in games that we just saw. Saturday and Sunday night, we'll be live. So it's playoff time, baby. We're locked in. It's not just our normal Monday, Wednesday, Friday. We're going to be live most nights for a while because there's just so much great basketball going on. So hope you guys tune in to all of that. And if you want more of our content, you know where to find it. TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh for all of our trivia content, all of clips from the show, graphics. If you want all of our full-length episodes, of course, those are on YouTube and across all audio platforms. Also, thank you to everybody who watched and left a nice comment on my video where I watched a game from every decade in NBA history. I really appreciate it. That took forever. That video was a behemoth, but I really liked it, and so I was glad to see that most of you guys enjoyed it as well. And if you haven't seen it and you want a 1.5-hour breakdown of like every decade in NBA history, how the game has changed, you can go ahead and check that out there. So with that, as always, Logan, sayonara in person. First time we've done an in-person pod in like a year and a half. Yeah, Summer League 2023 was the last time. How about that?
It's been a while. Big shout out to BDG for letting us use the studios today and for putting this trivia tournament together, which you guys can check out on their channel.
Absolutely. Everybody check out the trivia tournament. Check out the Combine. Check out the 7-on-7 game. That's all going to be up on their YouTube channel. The Combine already is, and I think the other stuff is soon to follow. So with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
And this was NerdSesh.